This week on Capitol Report.
Best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done?
Congressman Jim Himes joins the call on President Biden to get out of the race as the hand-wringing continues for the Democrats.
I am deeply concerned about Joe Biden winning this November.
Whoa, this is heavy.
While Republicans try to stay focused heading into their national convention.
I think you're going to see a far more competitive presidential election in Connecticut this year than we have in the past.
Let's get it on.
Also, where Connecticut's Democratic delegates stand on the president.
The Democratic Party has a tendency sometimes to eat its own alive.
Get in my belly!
Plus, a look at the chief of staff change in the governor's office.
Matt Brockman has probably the most important currency there is in this building, and that's trust.
Trust me, I can handle anything.
And 20 years later, a look at the movie that 60% of the time works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Never ceases to amaze. Capitol Report starts now. Welcome to Capitol Report. I am Tom Dutchick. We are so glad you're spending part of this Sunday morning alongside the Power Panel, a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, the great delegate. Danielle Wong, mayor of Bloomfield. Good morning. The coach, Joe Ursu, was not a delegate to anything, really.
Clearly, no.
Liz Karanowitz and Johnny McKinney beaming this morning. Republican stress, Johnny McKinney, the Brick Tamlin of Capitol Report here. What? All right, guys, let's get into it. Thursday night marked another critical moment for President Joe Biden and the Democrats on the path to 2024 election. The growing calls for Biden to step aside. The president taking questions from the press saying, I got to finish this job. There were signs of strength, but there were also some horrendous gaffes. And for the first time, we have a member of Connecticut's congressional delegation, 4th District Representative Jim Himes, member of the Gang of Eight, calling out Biden to get out of the race. Himes saying that the election will define the future of American democracy and that we must put forth the strongest candidate possible to confront the threat posed by Trump's MAGA authoritarianism, adding, I no longer believe that Joe Biden, and I hope that, as he has throughout a lifetime of public service. Guys, what do you think? Who wants this one first? Joe, go ahead.
Look, I'll go on this just really quickly. What President Biden did yesterday is what we expect of the office. I could not do what he did. The knowledge he has, the foreign affairs, his success is all true. The problem is the American people don't believe the 81-year-old president is capable of doing the duties, and that's really what it comes down to. And we're going into an election to where Donald Trump's on the ballot. He showed glimpses of what he wants to do with this country, and now he's doubling down on it. He could have the House, he could have the Senate, and clearly he has the Supreme Court. That's incredibly scary for all Democrats. We have to win this election. We have to get a candidate that wins it, and Joe Biden is just not going to be able to turn the tide.
You know, Congressman Himes' call for Joe Biden to step aside, I think, is more powerful than the average Democrat. Yes. He's the leading House Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. He sees the bad stuff happening around the world that none of us know about. And he's saying Joe Biden can't handle it. The question I have for Democrats, though, to be very blunt, is if Joe Biden were up 6 to 8 points in the poll, would anybody be calling for him to resign? That's a question you need to answer. Because I think the answer is no, you wouldn't. And that tells me you care more about winning than the fact that we could have a president who has Parkinson's or dementia, who's clearly in cognitive decline, as president. Everybody knew about this. Joe Biden is too old. He's not up to the job. He can't be president. You never should have run him. I mean, that's the problem here. And 2 weeks ago, I said he's not leaving. After watching that press conference, he's not going anywhere. And America's going to be faced with the choice of Donald Trump or a man who we may appreciate or like or revere for what he's done, who we know cannot do the job 4 years from now.
Well, there's one person on this panel who will be voting at the Democratic National Convention. That's you, Danielle.
Absolutely. I am a pledged delegate for the convention this August. And if Biden is at the top of the ticket, I will be voting for the president. The president has done an amazing job this term. I don't think that's in question. This isn't about if Biden is a bad president. This is about making sure that Trump does not ruin or continue to ruin our democracy. This is about elections. Elections look to the future. And that's where we need to continue to look. Now, I understand that the Washington Washington insiders and the donor class are going to say what they're going to say. I think we need to look to the ground. I think we need to look to the middle out, the ground up, as our president likes to say. If mayors across the nation were to speak out again on their concerns, you know, personally, I am skeptical of Biden's ability to win. That is not a secret, right? And so I think if, again, mayors across the land, you know, local leaders across the land spoke out, that would be significantly more powerful than the Washington insider narrative right now, because there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and I trust that they are getting to the goal of making sure that we have a strong candidate in November to defeat Trump. I don't think Biden is that candidate today.
Well, here's the thing, to John's point, and frankly to both of you, I mean, the reality is you all knew it. You have Democrats who have met with the president in private dozens of times. There is not a single Democrat in Washington, D.C. or around the country who has had interactions with this president and did not know and was not aware of what was going on. And you all made a choice. You made a choice that this is your president and this is your candidate. And you did not have a primary. You did not give your Democrat voters an option in the primary process. So you own this. You said, this is our guy. This is the direction we want to take the country. And so when voters are looking at Democrats, you will be held accountable for looking the other way, for lying and covering up what has been laid to bear for the entire country. And so voters in swing districts around the country, including Connecticut, are going to look at Democrats and go, you lied, and you were part of the cover-up, and you didn't offer us an alternative. And so you will bear the consequences.
All right, guys. As for Governor Lamont, he spoke with Biden in recent days about the path forward. As for the Gov's thoughts on this matter, take a listen.
He's playing defense. You don't win elections by playing defense. That Stephanopoulos interview was 30 straight questions on mental fitness. Not one question about Donald Trump. Not one question about his moral fitness. Not one question about what he wants to do to this country. And I don't think we're going to win an election if that's what the conversation is for the next 3.5 months.
And earlier in the week, Senator Chris Murphy says Biden needs to do more and that we need to get beyond this. And Senator Richard Blumenthal added this after reading Biden's letter to congressional Democrats last Monday. Watch this.
And he appears firmly and unequivocally, indeed unalterably, intent on continuing to be the Democratic candidate, and I take him at his words, and obviously he is making every effort to communicate with Democrats and quell the concerns that have been raised.
And Johnny Mack, I know Governor Lamont in his comments messaged his concern about the effect of down-ballot Democrats.
Well, he's right. You can't win if you're playing defense. And I think I don't see a lot of Democrats saying, well, Joe Biden's cognitive decline, so I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I think there are a lot of swing voters, and I mentioned this 2 weeks ago. When you see President Biden, you see weakness. And that weakness is seen by our enemies around the world. And I think there are a lot of Americans who may favor what they perceive as a strong Trump, for all of his Trumpism, over a very weak Biden when it comes to Iran, when it comes to China, when it comes to what's happening with Vladimir Putin in Russia. So I think that's a problem. But Joe Biden's age isn't going away. His cognitive decline isn't going to get better. So we're seeing probably the best he can be right now. It's only going to go downhill. And sadly, it can go downhill really fast.
Well, look, if there was another candidate other than Donald Trump, and I really want to dig in on this, I think the Democrats would probably let it ride and let Joe Biden go out there and continue to tout what he's done as president, because his achievements are amazing. But it's Donald Trump. Look who he's meeting with. He's talking with presidents of other countries that visit Putin, visit China, come visit him at Mar-a-Lago. He's put out this document, and whether he says he did or didn't, he did. It's his document. He wants to transform this country, the entire government. Democrats, we're scared. We're scared that Donald Trump can win, and we just want to make sure that somebody can beat him, because it will be devastating. He could possibly have the entire Congress, Senate, and House. He clearly has the Supreme Court. I'm saying it again. And what he'll be able to do with his flawed character is dangerous for this country. That's why this discussion is so important.
Well, now you know what Joe's like on the sidelines of the Berlin Redcoats game, guy. All right, so as we approach the Republican convention, Donald Trump has rubber-stamped the RNC's updated platform that softens language on abortion. The platform committee voting to adopt language that says Republicans will oppose late-term abortions while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF treatments, all while affirming support that abortion issues should be well determined at the state level. This doesn't play well with conservatives, but Republican State Party Chairman Ben Proto says the provisions do reflect Connecticut values, but that it isn't what they're placing their focus. As for what's happening with President Biden right now, Proto says that's good news for the GOP in normally blue states. Listen to Ben.
These are states that traditionally have been strong Democrat strongholds in presidential politics. And we're seeing the same thing in the numbers that we're seeing in Connecticut, where Trump and Biden are running very close to each other throughout the state. So I think you're going to see a far more competitive presidential election in Connecticut this year than we have in the past.
Well, Danielle, the Republicans seem to realize that their abortion platform is a problem for them.
Well, I think it's an advantageous spot that they're in. They're trying to leverage the gap with support and, for those lean, strong Democrats that are kind of weary right now and teetering on the edge of supporting and kind of understanding and waiting for that leadership to arise as it relates to who's the candidate for the president. So I think this is really a narrative. I think it's kind of a ploy. It's a gimmick to really kind of garner support. And Liz, when you talk about kind of the consequences of the Democrats and the decision that we have made, your party, the Republicans, have put up this racist candidate and these racist issues and concerns, and that's where we are today, and we're trying to combat that. And so I think it's a really root cause of your party and what you guys have done.
I would just be careful about broad brush calling Republicans racist. I think that what's, to me, most interesting is that the platform for decades has always included provisions that were pro-life. And so for the first time in generations,
1976,
we're not seeing that. And I think that's important because you do have Republicans who are pro-choice, who have pro-choice voting records. You have Republicans in Congress, you have Republican governors, you have Republican candidates, you have Republican legislators who have been outspoken pro-choice advocates. And I think so for the first time for that to be included as part of the platform is significant. And I think it's a credit to, honestly, the Trump campaign for listening to that and to adopting that language. And frankly, the folks on the pro-life side of things were and are quite upset.
All right, guys, so hey, you know who's keeping a close watch on what's happening with President Biden? Connecticut's Democratic delegates, including Danielle. Up next on Cap Report, our Mike Cerulli gets some insight from those who will be nominating a candidate come convention time. Do not go away. At least first block. With all this talk about Joe Biden's future, we thought it'd be a good idea to take the pulse of the people who will actually select the Democratic nominee, the delegates. Our pal Mike Cerulli has been working the phones all week, and he joins us now. Mike, if Biden stays in, if he doesn't stay in, ultimately these delegates are going to be the ones to pick the nominee. What's Connecticut's DNC delegation telling you, Mike?
Yeah, good morning, Tom. You're right about that. In most of the scenarios being contemplated, the delegates have the final say. And right now, the vast majority of delegates nationwide, virtually all of them really, are pledged to Joe Biden. So if the president stays the course, it should be pretty simple. Those delegates will overwhelmingly renominate him for president on the first ballot. In most other scenarios being considered, Biden would have to explicitly release those pledged delegates in order to vote freely on the first ballot. And as for what I'm hearing from our delegates in Connecticut, it's true that there are some Connecticut delegates who harbor pretty deep concerns about the president. A few that I've spoken to would be pleased to see him step aside. We've heard Mayor Wong say that publicly. And those delegates are largely echoing what we've heard from Jim Himes, who believes it's time for the president to go, that he can't win, and that his age will hinder his ability to do the job as he nears his late 80s. There are also delegates who are standing behind President Biden. Take a listen to two of those Connecticut delegates, Josh Elliott and Corey Paris, defending Biden.
I think right now, as it stands, Biden, for better or for worse, is the best chance to beat Trump.
And I know that there were a lot of questions around his health, but look, I'll tell you this. I ask you to give me one politician in public service who is the same person they were 3, 4, 5, 6 years after they got elected.
Like two ambitious legislators there defending the president, Paris even defending Biden's health. So Mike, let's talk hypotheticals. Imagine Biden does step aside. Are these delegates telling you how they'd vote at a brokered convention?
Yeah, that's definitely a big question right now. If Biden steps aside before the convention, before he is formally re-nominated, it would be up to those delegates to pick a nominee. And of course, we've all heard the names floated: Whitmer, Newsom, Josh Shapiro, Westmore, Andy Beshear. But I want to hone in on one point that I have heard from two prominent Connecticut Democrats, and it has to do with how black voters might react if Vice President Harris isn't nominated in the event that Biden steps aside. Take a listen to this.
And I will issue a warning to the Democratic Party. Anyone other than Kamala Harris, and you don't have to be a big Kamala Harris fan, but anyone else that's suggested as a presidential nominee if Biden decided not to run again, that is not Kamala Harris, you will be giving the Republicans the White House for nearly another generation.
Now, that's Corey Paris, a delegate and, of course, a state representative, saying that picking anyone other than Vice President Harris would be tantamount to political suicide for Democrats when it comes to that important black vote. And it's not just him saying that. I caught up with our pal Brandon McGee. He's actually on the DNC platform committee. He's backing Biden, but I asked him what might happen if Biden steps aside. Take a listen to what he said.
She, as in our current Vice President Kamala Harris, she is the only choice that would be able to fill that role and to continue the joint mission and vision of this current administration. And I agree with my colleague, my former colleague, Representative Corey Paris. It would be suicide.
McGee and Paris, powerful dude. Mike Cerulli, a former delegate himself, probably didn't even drink before when you were last convention. Mike, good job.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
You can call them the Lamont Whisperers. Up next on Cap Report, a look at the chief of staff change inside the governor's office. We'll discuss when we get back. Don't go away. It's really break. Right before the 4th of July holiday, there was a staff shakeup in the Lamont administration. Chief of Staff Johnny Dack resigned, and immediately Matthew Brockman was named as his replacement. Dack's moving to New York City, but will remain on the payroll as a special advisor to the governor. Brockman, no stranger to the Capitol. He was once chief of staff to the guy on my left, Joe Arasimowicz, when Joe was Speaker of the House many moons ago. He had been one of Governor Lamont's senior advisors. Watch this.
Matt Brockman has probably the most important currency there is in this building, and that's trust. I think people in this building on both sides of the aisle know him. They know him well.
When we look at the challenges that we have before us, whether it's the biennium budget or it's the housing shortages or it's how much more we can be doing to help with childcare, all the issues that matter to you, that's the perspective that you bring, that you challenge us to bring to this job, and why I'm proud to be on this team. An opportunity.
I don't know, Joe. Your pal Brockman's not smiling much, so that's not a good thing.
Look, Matt doesn't typically smile all that much anyways. Yeah, look, I met Matt, almost 15 years ago. He came off the Obama campaign. I met him. I instantly saw how talented, how smart he was, and how much of a hard worker he was. Ned Lamont made a great choice. I want to thank Johnny Dack for all his service to the state. He was with Ned Lamont from the beginning. He helped run the campaign. He was crucial to the successes we've had as a state. So thank you, Johnny. But Matt just puts it to another level. He has the relationships in the legislature. The commissioners know him and they trust him because his heart is in a good place. And he's a great number two. He was for me. It was never about what Matt Brockman wanted on an issue. It's what was good for the state and what was good for us as a chamber. And that's what you want. Those jobs are really hard. Tom, you can speak to it better than anybody else. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But knowing the heart Matt Brockman does and how he loves the state of Connecticut and loves Ned Lamont as I do, it's going to go a long way. I would predict now with Matt Brockman on board, we will see a Ned Lamont
Johnny, second term? Third term?
Well,
Three-peat's coming.
And honestly, that was the signal that I took, right? You've got Brockman, who all the respect in the world. We've been on opposite sides of campaigns several times. I have nothing but respect for Brockman. And I think that, to me, that signaled that the governor is very seriously considering a third term. And I'll say this, I think it's also really important that Brockman was part of your team during the 2017 budget negotiations. And I think,
key
again,
member.
that signals to the legislature and, to your point, to keep people in the administration. This governor is very serious about those fiscal guardrails. This governor is very serious about protecting the important pieces of that 2017 budget. And I think Brockman is absolutely the right guy to continue on that path.
Very proud of him.
All right, guys, you should be. Hey, well, I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal. Next on Cap Report, raise the glass to Ron Burgundy.
He's Tom Dutchett.
Well, if you're a regular Cap Report viewer, you may notice in the open we splice some funny movie clips to lighten the political mood. You may have noticed one movie in particular gets a little more airtime on Cap Report than most.
Stop what you're doing and listen. Cannonball!
That's right, I'm talking about Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. And this week we wanted to take a Cap Report minute to celebrate Anchorman's 20th anniversary as we get older. It's a movie that never gets old. The laughs keep coming and will continue for another 20 years. Guys, is Anchorman on your list of the greatest movies of all time? Right up there with 10 Commandments?
100%.
100%.
100%.
San Diego.
I want to know when we're going to have the Capitol Report Rumble, you know, with the baseball bats and chains.
We would definitely be all the Sunday morning programs. There's not even a shot.
Yeah, Joe's first and the rest of us will follow.
That'll do it for Cap Report this week. For the mayor, the coach, Lizzie, Johnny Mac, stay classy, Connecticut. I'm Tom Dutchett.
Come on, John.
I have physical decline.